about to go the way of the horse and buggy. A federal committee has recommended it be shut down, and Newfoundland and Ottawa are talking about it. Still, no one is saying for sure, and the uncertainty is upsetting people who depend on it. Tonight, a special report. The Newfoundland Railway, poised to die at the hands of politicians, just as it was born and sustained by them. As Rick Stewart tells us, the miracle of the Newfoundland Railway may be that it made it as far as it did.
The train still comes through Bishop Falls, a town that used to be a bustling transshipment point for the railway. This town grew up around the railway. A town from another time. It has tried to keep up, but the rest of the world has other plans for Bishop Falls and other towns like it. A few decades ago, a couple of hundred people used to work here. Today, there are less than 60.
In my day, I think.
Back in 1881, when the government of the day was deciding to build a railway, they had a choice to make, a logical choice, much the same kind of choice that you might have to make today when you buy a VCR. What do you go with? Do you go with Beta? Do you go with VHS? Whichever one you choose, you hope that all your friends do the same thing so that you can swap tapes. Well, the Newfoundland government made the wrong choice. For apparently reasons of economy, they went the narrower gauge, and just about everybody else in North America went the wider gauge.
That means that freight cars going to and from the mainland have to have a complete wheel change, an unnecessary expense that helps make sure the railway loses money. Then, because the tracks were so narrow, the trains couldn't get up to full speed because they might tip over. This was a very controversial railway line. Like the smoke that poured from the engine stack, controversy always seemed to trail behind. In the beginning, Newfoundland needed the latest in transportation systems to keep up with the rest of North America. Enter the railway. It was built from town to town westward from St. John's. But the acknowledged builder of the railway was Robert Reed, an engineer from Montreal who finished it off to Port aux Basques and made his family great wealth in the process. Historians have judged the railway to be a giant pork barrel. Businessmen and lawyers made lots of money, and the politicians used it to reward their friends and win votes. Over several decades, the Reed Company not only operated the railway, but the tramway in St. John's, telegraph lines, and ferries to the mainland. The government granted huge land concessions to the company. In one scandal, the Minister of Finance, A.B. Morin, who was negotiating a controversial deal with Reed, was found to be on his payroll as a lawyer receiving a huge retainer. Round about the time of the First World War, the government decided to have the Reed Company build branch lines to several remote areas. It was something that would never pay, but it forced the government to borrow heavily and made it vulnerable to the Depression, which was to follow. Prime Minister Morris may have joined the governor for the inauguration of the Bonavista branch line, and he may have won the hearts of the voters, but he lost millions of dollars in taxpayers' money. By the time the Depression riots were underway, the government had bought out the Reed's ownership of the railway and was carrying the huge losses all by itself. Huge debts from the railway and other problems eventually forced Newfoundlanders to give up the right to vote. They had to accept a government by commission from Britain. During World War II, the railway actually made money, but that didn't last long. After the war, it was back to the huge government subsidies again. Then, with some help from Britain, a Confederate movement succeeded in convincing Newfoundlanders to join Canada in a referendum. In 1949, the deal was signed in Ottawa. A railway was guaranteed Newfoundlanders as long as there was a demand for service.
So after more than a half-century of controversy, after scandal, political patronage, ineptitude, bungling, after helping contribute to the loss of democratic government in Newfoundland, and ultimately Newfoundland's independence, the Newfoundland Railway was to become part of the national fabric of the Canadian railway system. But if anybody thought that that was going to solve the problem, they had another thing coming.
At first, it was great. New diesel engines, new cars, new dining cars, and there was an impressive new ferry operating across the Gulf to the mainland. Throughout the 50s, the railway continued to lose money, but Canada poured $100 million into it. Newfoundlanders had never had it so good. Bullet became a tourist attraction, a fun ride, perhaps a chance to see some four-legged Newfoundlanders up close.
Some quaint practices still remain. At Wreck House, on a desolate stretch of line between Red Rocks and St. Andrews, the winds sweep down from the mountains with gales of such force that trains have been blown off the tracks. Lucky McDougall is employed here by the railway as a human wind gauge.
He'd been blown up here in time to 105, with it before that.
The Bullet was at the height of its fame in the early 60s, but there had been subtle changes.
I don't think that the people that came with Confederation were as friendly as the people before Confederation. Seemed like there was much more between employee and boss there, you know, they were closer than they appeared to be after.
But times were changing. There were other faster ways of getting around, and in the mid-60s, the government of Premier Joe Smallwood made a deal with Ottawa to build a road across the island. It was a great election tool for Smallwood, and he received the biggest majority ever. Then a few years later, Ottawa decided to end the rail passenger service, and the highway deal suddenly took on a new light for Newfoundlanders.
I think there was a deal made somewhere along the line with regards to the Trans-Canada Highway.
The fickle Newfoundland voters then rushed to the other side of the electoral boat, electing almost all Tories in the next federal election. And they put in a new provincial Tory government as well. The successful Tories were synonymous with the Save the Railway movement. Throughout the 70s, the freight service remained, but Newfoundland's thin population kept the losses in the tens of millions every year. When a royal commission recommended that it be phased out over 10 years, the Newfoundland government was bitterly opposed.
No provincial government should be placed in the position of having to surrender its constitutional rights in order to obtain necessary improvements in its public service. And any threat or suggestion of blackmail in this regard will not be accepted.
When Premier Peckford came to power, the railway continued to be a political football, and he took the media on a special train ride to illustrate the need for a new infusion of money. Newfoundland's federal Tories, now in power in Ottawa, were also committed to keeping the railway.
The PC government in Ottawa and the PC government here in St. John's that were both dedicated to preserving and improving the railway. We're not going to let it die.
They arranged a massive conversion to containers, cutting down on the wheel transfers by simply having the freight carried in transportable boxes. The number of employees was also reduced, but after 5 years, the experiment has not made the railway profitable. Clyde Hollett will soon be 40. He's never done anything else for a living but work on the railway.
Every morning you come to work and everybody's talking about or wondering when your job is going to be gone. You go home at night and your wife, she's asking you, did you hear anything? It's every day of your life, you know, you're just getting more frustrated, and you're wondering if you're going to have to move out or to the mainland somewhere and with the company and look for employment there. Or
the climate in Bishop Falls, like other railway towns, is one of suspicion and frustration.
When you have one direct job eliminated, we have been told that the multiplying factor of actual job loss is 2.8. So you take that one job and multiply it 2.8 times. In Bishops, for example, where we have 63 employees in the railway, we have learned that there's approximately 160 students in our school system. So if those men leave and those women leave, then those children will probably leave our school system and go to other towns. So the teachers' jobs are affected too.
A teacher not only leads opinion in the classroom, but he's also mayor of the town.
It was dying in the 60s. This is the same way they're getting rid of the freight now as the way they got rid of the passenger service in the late 60s. In other words, let it deteriorate, let it go down, let it become obsolete, and then no one will want it anyway.
People used to complain because the Bullet took more than a day to travel across the island. But these days, service is so infrequent that freight takes up to 5 days to make the same trip.
This freight arrived in Port-au-Basque didn't get out of Port-au-Basque on a Wednesday, well, it's from Wednesday till sometime Monday morning. It'll arrive St. John's.
People who want their freight in a hurry, they can't get it from CN. They're going to take it from the truckers when they can haul it to them every day. Why can't CN do that?
Should be a train out of Port-au-Basque arriving St. John's every day. If they mind to put the trains back on and put them into work, there could be a train going every day.
Recently, a delegation of railway unions went to see Premier Peckford, a man that they think is all that stands between them and the end of the railway. But the Peckford government, while officially demanding an improved railway service, has to know that if it doesn't happen, the railway will just shrivel up until there is so little demand for it, the constitutional guarantee will be worth nothing.
If the federal government has a proposal, let's see it and let's examine it and let's the unions have their say on it, and then we will see where we go from there.
For the workers, the frustration finally showed itself in human terms.
It's on and on as time goes, and we're just being told to be patient, be patient, be patient. But our people, you know, their patience are running out, their frustrations are mounting, and the frustrations are being taken out on whoever they can reach. That I know that we're constantly under pressure, and it's really not fair.
Historically, you can certainly argue that the Newfoundland Railway has been a bit of a joke, but for the people who found work on it, it was a godsend. It was a way to earn money in a place where that's really difficult. The railway's final days have not been funny at all. Rick Seward, CBC News, St. John's.